isn't that better? The person looks back and goes, oh my God, I'm dying, someone help me. And I go, I can help, and then I shoot them. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Narratives and Nonsense. We are friends talking about random and recent stories, newsworthy or otherwise. I'm Jordan or Gillidan. This here is...
Hey everybody, it's me, the master of the five strings and the eater of the onion rings, Connor.
Eater of the onion rings. I like that. Dude, onion rings are freaking fantastic.
Oh.
Yeah, so, well, we'll just touch on the week. It was freaking cold here. We got, I don't know how many inches of snow on like Tuesday, Wednesday this last week. I mean, it was it was properly buried in. Some people didn't like go to work type stuff here in Colorado. How was it up there in Canada?
It was mostly just wind blowing snow that's already here around, but it was like 90 kilometers at some points, which is like insane for up here.
Just
And
if you're
like
standing, you're gonna get knocked over type thing.
not quite as bad, but like if you're holding something like I had to go work up in Edmonton this weekend or
Yep.
this week, and the first day we didn't do anything. We just some of our panels for the doors got blown over and messed up, so we kind of messed that up, kind of cleaned up the fence. It all got knocked over, so we put that back up, and we just left. So that was about 3 hours of driving for basically nothing.
Jeez. Oh my gosh. Well,
Yep.
just kind of diving into our weeks. Personally, I've been doing a lot of 3D printing. um, there's two different reasons. Well, the first is my mom. She works as a nurse, so she teaches a large number of nursing students, and then there's what other doctors and staff at the hospital. Normally, when I print stuff out for her, it's so that she can make little like gifts, parting away, good luck type things for her students. And it'll be printed around some kind of either inside joke or fun thing that they did. So this last go around was a bunch of Smurfs. Before that, she would call them her minions. So I printed out
Nice.
minions. I printed out Smurfs. Apparently, one of the doctors, who's known as like the ultimate healer or something like that in the hospital, this doctor, she's looking to make like a goodbye basket with some of the other people, because she's on like some of the different boards, so she's pretty hands-on with a lot of facets of the hospital. And one of the things was printing out a little baby Yoda Grogu that's like reaching out with the Force as if he was feeling Mandalorian, or technically not Mando. He heals oh shoot, whatever the mayor character's name. Spoilers for season 1 of Mando. Anyway, it's that moment where he's reaching out, his eyes are closed and like he's concentrating. So I printed that out. But
nice.
I also printed out this one. I actually like.
Of course, there's an FTL for that.
Right. And then I also have these little portal guys, which are fun. So there's a bunch of different colors of them. This is based off of a thing on Thingiverse. I resized it and changed it a little bit.
Nice.
But these little tokens we're going to be using for a Risk game. So a friend of mine named Heather invited me to join in Double Risk, is what they called it. I don't know if there's any other titles that it would go by, but it's at this point, I think she said there's 15 to 20 people, so it might turn into like triple Risk. But basically, you've got a Risk board. You know how Risk works. You build up your armies, you conquer territories. Risk itself is like, maybe up to 5 people.
Wait, you build up your armies? You don't just immediately attack the closest person?
Just immediately go full out. No, not quite. And essentially it's a way to get more people to play Risk for literally just hours. So you have one board, and then you come up with like what it's connected to on another Risk board. And because there's enough people that are interested in playing, and like alcohol and food will be all over the place, so lots of fun with it. We might even get like a third risk board. And so to make it easier to know who's going where with what territories, I was making these little portals. So you have a couple, like you just have two of the blue ones side, like
Yeah,
this goes to this one, this goes to this one. If it connects to
yeah,
multiple, I printed 4 of each color, so I hope that's enough.
decent.
Yeah.
I like
Um,
it. I like it.
so that's gonna be entertaining. I'm very excited. That'll be uh not next week. Next week is the Super Bowl with, was it the Bengals and Rams or something? I don't know. I don't pay enough attention to sports ball. But after next weekend will be the double risk thing. So we're gonna have to talk about that
Nice.
madness.
Fun alternative use for cool risk pieces on Amazon. You can get some nice, it's called improved risk pieces. You get a
Mhm.
bunch of cool, like unique little models. Great if you want to play Napoleonic war games, but you don't want
Mm.
to paint little figures.
Is it like the like standing soldiers and cannons? Because like
Yeah,
the
and there's like
risk,
ships and yeah, you can get a couple of
sweet.
different things.
I know
It's more
for
just that
Mhm.
like you can get a lot of those for very cheaply. I do know Risk. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure Risk has some sets that actually have the
Well, yeah, I was gonna
different
say
things.
I had this whole conversation with her. I was like, "Hey, so what version of Risk do you have? What pieces do you have? Because I have some off versions. Because I have a
Yeah,
StarCraft
like
Risk,
Lord.
I have a Star
You have like
Wars,
Lord of the Rings.
Yep, Lord of the
That's one
Rings
I always
Risk.
really liked.
Yeah, and all of them have different types of little tokens and different denominations for each. So I was asking like, okay, what tokens do you have? And she's like, well, I don't have any like little miniatures. It's just it's I think she said she has like the 1975 risks, so it's literally just
Oh, okay.
like
Hype.
a little triangle indicator, and then the
Huh.
higher point value has just more points on the little icon, and
Oh,
that's
okay.
it.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Like
not even
that's
like little guys.
yeah, so it's
Interesting.
much more abstract, which I went,
Yeah,
oh, interesting.
that'll be
um,
hilarious. Oh,
right? So we might run into like there's one of those like
yeah.
fighting like orcs and goblins
Yeah, like
or something.
Urkai and shit.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so we'll see. I'm debating on printing like large denominations, but I'm gonna have to figure out like what color pieces they have because I know it's not just like uh it's not just the primaries, like they have a black color,
yeah,
and then they have some of those like secondary or tertiary colors, so I have to figure out what colors they have so I can print something that's representative of it.
yeah.
um but yeah, that was entertaining. And then
On the
I
Lord of the Rings one,
yeah,
if you guys can get a hold of that Risk, it is super fun. It has an alternative mode where you can play through as like the party from the series, and there's like all these
yeah,
story events. It's really cool.
yeah, and it comes with
If
the
you get a
one
chance,
ring,
try it.
and
Yeah,
if you get the one ring, you gotta go with it. um
that's a really good Risk.
I will say, if you get Lord of the Rings Risk, look for the one that goes through the trilogy, because I have the Two Towers version, so you don't actually get Gondor and Mordor. It stops at like Rohan.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, that is a good tip. Yeah.
yeah, I'm always looking out for people.
But if you
So
see that, grab her.
yeah,
She
no, it's a
good.
lot of fun. So that's one thing. Um, Another thing, just on the subject of like games and stuff, I am gearing up to play a Dungeons and Dragons game with one of my players, John. I've played with him for a very long time. I've run him in, I don't know, like 5 different campaigns or something at this point. Um, and uh, for D&D things, you guys are gearing up for a new adventure. Um, between
Getting
the two,
strapped, son.
yeah. So I'm playing. I'm running a Star Wars game with Connor as Kasei. He is a Gungan in the party of 5, and then you guys are kind of gearing up for war against the Separatists. The setting of the world is basically if Palpatine died in Episode 3, what happens 20 years later. So it's still kind of the Republic. The Jedi, some of the Jedi kind of like fractured off and made it like an evil communist dictatorship type of thing where it's like the good of all above anything else type stuff. So it really is an exaggerated form of the Jedi losing their way. So instead of creating an empire, it creates a Russia basically. And then you guys are looking to fight the Separatists because the droids didn't end up getting like outright wiped out with all of the craziness that happens in the Republic because they just offed the Chancellor like in the middle of a war. So Um, that's been pretty exciting. Do you have thoughts about where the next steps are for that narrative, as it were?
Well, as always, interestingly enough, my character was mind controlled at one point, so I'm not even really. So technically, he's not even really privy to a lot of what's going to be happening. All he really knows is there is a war a coming, and we're trying to get ready for it. But we gotta clean up a few things we kind of left uncleaned, so that's been fun. But we're getting there. We're getting there. I'm
Collecting
very excited for it.
debts owed to you. You guys have money now. You have over
Yeah.
20,000 credits. Yeet.
Yep.
And a
And
crew.
we don't owe any at all to anybody. We're
None
totally positive.
whatsoever.
Not in the red at all.
I don't know what you're
Perfect.
talking about with those credit cards.
I they're not mine.
That's
They're
fair.
not mine.
That's fair. I'm excited for John's game. John's running a 5e game in a setting of his own making. Essentially, the idea is there's a new world type of continent that the rest of the world has discovered and is all kind of flooding into.
Ooh,
Previously, this world had
nice.
this like large elven empire that just disappeared one day. This would have happened like
Ooh,
a couple hundred years ago, maybe something like
I
that.
like it.
Um, yeah, I'm pretty excited
Very
for it.
Lovecraft. Very cool. I enjoy that.
A little bit like that. The other idea is that this new continent is very magically volatile. So you could literally think like
Okay.
biomes in Minecraft. You could be walking through a snowy
Oh
tundra and then
yeah.
suddenly it's desert and then suddenly it's a jungle. Um,
I
so
was more referencing in that like there was an ancient race here,
yeah.
but then they
Oh
disappeared. That's
no.
very like that's a classic.
Yeah, one
I love
one
it.
thing that he might be
Take some tips. This is good world building. The island
I
thing especially, very smart.
I
Very
think
smart move.
something that I really hope he runs with is when you said that one day the Elf Empire disappeared. I started laughing and I'm like, and I hope he uses this. I went, so I really hope that it's the case that like some adventurers like had to fight this damn Elf Empire and they got so sick of fighting these Elf Empires, like they finished the adventure. End of the campaign, they get the wish spell, and the dude just goes, "Dude, I fucking wish all of them died and no one remembered who they were." And then it happened. That's my hope is that they literally got
Someone
Thanos
Thanos
snapped
snapped the
them.
elves.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Because I think that's really funny and a big part of everybody like coming to this new world is there's essentially a like city state of this is a uh, a world continent and city run by adventurers. So it's literally all of these adventuring parties are coming here and exploring what the heck is happening on this continent. So it makes sense that it kind of starts with an adventuring party like causing some chaos. Um, so I'm pretty excited for that. My character is what I'll call the anti-party. So the party as a whole, we have a Warforged cleric who, or sorry,
Ooh,
Warforged Divine Soul
sorcerer.
sorcerer. Yep,
Yeah,
yep,
that's how she gets it.
yeah, yeah,
Love that.
yeah. So robotic, trying to figure out like what their place in the world is. The story behind the character is theoretically that they like woke up and don't know who made them or why they made them, but they were made for some nefarious purpose probably. Um, but generally just very they described him as being more like Data or Baymax. So
Mm.
just kind of roaming around figuring out how things work, very, exploratory and very, I would say, like childlike, I guess, if you go by the Baymax comparison, where it's just like, hello, yes, greetings, like
Maybe
very,
maybe naive.
yeah, yeah, that's a good word. Um, so that's one character. Another character was a pacifist lizard folk paladin who wants to continue to spread pacifism on this new world. Um, the other character was a what I'll say is a closeted druid. So it is a person that like grew up in some family had this whole like education behind them, but she found out that she has druid powers. So she goes to meet with a druid mentor like in the woods, kind of in secret to figure out like, ooh, what is this kind of fun type of like situation she's got. At some point, the like mentor ends up dying, and she finds out after the fact that they were killed off by like her family. So
Mm.
it's one of those things where it's like she's trying to like find comfort or like self acknowledgement, fulfillment, the confidence in being a druid, which I think is interesting. And then
I like how you can really see her class and background reflected in all that. That's
yeah,
very good. I enjoy that. It's
yeah,
a really solidly made character.
that one I think is narratively I'm the most excited
Oh yeah.
for. And then the final one was a bard that has performance anxiety, which I think is hilarious.
That'll be great.
Now, given that, the characters so far are very kind, trying to like find their own thing. They're not necessarily aggressive or greedy or anything like that. They're not out to like get things. Um, they're more about their own kind of like self-actualization or fulfillment of some sorts. And all of them said that they're like neutral good, lawful good. I don't know if
Ooh.
anyone's chaotic good. Originally, I was planning on being like a neutral good, just I'm a do-gooder. I try to do best by everyone. After the rest of the party happened, I went, you know what? I want to be evil. I want to be a
I'm a
shitstar. I want to be the drama. So, what I am now is uh, a a peace cleric satyr that
nice.
that
Oh,
doesn't actually care for peace. He uses peace as an excuse to exploit people. And if you break the peace, oh well, I get to profit. That's kind of the idea of it. So he's literally I have it so he's neutral evil, and uh
ooh,
because he's kind of like a war cleric of sorts. The whole idea is that he has two-hander. Eventually I'll be like specking into feats for like sentinel and polearm master
yeah,
ideally, that kind of
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But
Uh,
very much like no, I like yeah, I can heal somebody, but it's never my prepared spell. That's an afterthought. I have like
mm,
shield and the what sacred flame, like those are what are on my hot
yeah,
bar. Stab. Like
yeah.
I'm very excited. But um because of him being a satyr that's like in it for the greed, going through kind of the list of things, um my idea is that he's not a great fighter because again he's cleric primarily. So uh he supplements his fighting with magic, and so it's more about like kind of imbuing the weapon with additional power.
Yeah.
So finding or acquiring or using magical weapons, that's kind of like a flip side of the construct. The construct's trying to figure out why they exist, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna use all of my tools at my disposal. Kind of thing. So that's one thing. The next thing is the druid. So the druid's very much in tune with nature. My character's background is a courtier, so very much like in it with the
Nice.
big governance that is totally for trying to exploit the natural resources on this new world. So anti-druid. He starts
A bash
fights.
associate,
Yeah,
one could
he
say.
starts fights. Like he's a peace cleric that is out to cause shit.
To
So
maintain
that's
the illusion
of peace. Yep. So he's the anti-pacifist paladin, and then finally he's a satyr, and satyrs are given performance training and proficiency with a musical instrument. And so we have a bard with performance anxiety, and then in comes this fuckboy piece of shit satyr that, and I quote, is proficient with the kazoo.
Nice.
So
Solid.
so there's gonna be this bard that's like actually good at singing and performing, and then there's just gonna be this piece of shit satyr in the background just I can't wait. I've literally created the anti-party. So I'm excited to see how it goes. I am the drama. Um but yeah,
I like that a lot.
right. It's so silly. Um
So
Yes.
Question, just to derail this a little bit. What is your favorite alignment, would you say, that you enjoy playing the most?
Um,
Pretending alignment is like a big deal,
yeah, so
which it is in some.
generally speaking, I try to play good. Like, I feel bad playing bad a lot of the time as
There's
a
a certain
player.
cohesiveness
Yeah,
that it helps with.
and I'm gonna tie alignment in D&D sense and in video game sense. In video games, I have a really hard time being a dick in a video
It's
game,
hilarious.
but in D&D, I have less of a hard time, especially if I've built my character in a way that is evil. Like, I'm able to disassociate the two easier in D&D. No idea why.
That is interesting, actually.
Right?
Huh.
Yeah. I think the reason is with D&D, whenever I play a character in D&D, I very much think of myself being separate of that character.
You're not self-inserting in the
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, in a video game, it's
Ah,
like, oh, yes, I am
yeah.
playing this role of this character in this world, and it's like, well, I better be nice to people. I want them to like me, like, kind of thing. With D&D, I'm just like, yes, kill everyone. um, Generally speaking, it's basically a focus character first with D&D, and I'm not assigned a role, so I get that flexibility. Mohaha.
Yeah.
I usually lean good. The t- I often lean more towards chaotic good because I like to say I am the player that I would hate most to run. Uh, and then
I mean, I still feel like chaotic good's not too bad for that. It's when
no,
I see like chaotic neutral, that's when I'm like, ooh. Chaotic good, I'm like, okay, all right. At least this person isn't gonna like throw a baby against the wall and say it's what my character would do.
yeah, that's fair. I wouldn't do that out of nowhere. It's all based on
One,
the
I
characters
would probably dispute that and
thing.
be like, all right, that's a little much for C good.
Yeah.
Like, you're still good.
I think a good example is a while ago, I was in a campaign, and I feel really bad for the DM. He goes by Bones. Just, um, I played as who I'll call Heyman Endwagon. This was based off of uh, Michael J. Caboose, Caboose from Red versus Blue,
Oh, good.
and that I would
Sounds like
say.
a very productive character.
Oh no! He was hot garbage to play as, and man, I had fun. So with Caboose, I would say is chaotic good. He tries to do good, he's just not very good at it.
Yeah.
Like ultimately, he's
He
about
tries to
friendship
do
and
good,
stuff.
and chaos ensues.
Yes, exactly. And so I
Quite
went
perfect.
through Red versus Blue and like try to pick up different things. So anytime someone asks for help, he shoots them, as an example. And I went yoink and threw it into the D&D character, and it led to some pretty like ridiculous moments. At one point, this is a sillier campaign, which was fantastic. I love Bones. He's just a wonderful person and wonderful DM. He had a concert for like this big pop sensation essentially in the middle of this thing, and what ends up happening is somebody in the crowd has invented this device that can take a still frame of whatever's in front of it. It's a camera. It can take a photograph, basically. And the idea, I find this out after the fact, is this fan in the crowd that has invented a camera wants us to go and like get a nude photo or like sneak a dick pic of the famous pop star. That's the like silly, goofy, over the top nonsense
Jeez.
that this campaign was filled with. I ruined the plot hook because I'm also in the crowd of people, and I went full quote fangirl because everyone kept talking about the fangirls of the crowd. And so my like well armored half orc caboose with blue skin like goes into the midst of this crowd. He has a disguise kit for reasons and ends up like putting on a
Always
blonde
gotta
wig and a
disguise.
dress and is like screaming and shouting. He's totally in with the mosh pit. this person approaches the party and says, "Hey guys, I have this like really like crazy kind of fun idea. It looks like you guys are into everything that's going on as well. Um, I need you guys to help me." And then my not caboose end wagon goes, "Help! I can help!" and shoots her with a crossbow in the middle of a crowd of this mob performance. Chaos ensues naturally because someone just got shot in the middle of a thing for asking for help. And so the party rogue like grabs me and just whoosh whisks me away into a nearby tavern while the like everything just turns into just a full like stampede. Everyone's running all over the place. I end up going into this bar with the rogue, and earlier in the campaign we had run into this I'm gonna say this guy that hatched a pyramid scheme in which we were going to go and steal riches from a pyramid. But the idea was that he was going to use the wealth from this pyramid to create a new cough drop. And how this pitch went down is the guy like grabbed a pepper shaker, threw a little bit of pepper in my face, so I started sneezing and coughing, gives me a cough drop, and now suddenly I'm better. Caboose and wagon immediately was just like, hell yes, I am completely down. Forgoes all of his shares to like help get more of these cough drops. And so instead of having any actual money, he just has like 2,000 cough drops on his person at any time. What ends up happening is I go into this bar with the rogue after all this chaos ensues. And when I get to the bar, the bartender's like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on out there?" And I proceed to like say, "Oh, you know, there's some like crazy stuff and people are yelling and screaming and stuff, but hey, I have a question. Have do you have cough drops?" And he's like, "Wait, what?" And I grab the pepper shaker and I like I unscrew the top of it and just throw a fistful of pepper into the bartender's face. And then after, rather than just like a sprinkle, they're like dying because they've basically got pepper sprayed in their eyes, their nose, everything. And then I grab a handful of the cough drops. I haven't even unwrapped them and just shove it into their mouth. So they start choking on them. And I just immediately go, "See, isn't that better?" The person looks back and goes, "Oh my God, I'm dying, someone help me." And I go, "I can help," and then I shoot them. The rogue fucking played brilliantly. Goes, "I'm sorry, he clearly is a danger to society. He hasn't had his medication. He does need to be admitted back into the hospital. Do you have like a safe room, a back corner, something like that we can like keep him restrained, you know, until like authorities and the like get here?" And the bartender like fully buys into it, is just like, "Okay, yeah, you know what, it's right over there." Still coughing and dying. And myself and the rogue go into this back safe room. The safe room has a bunch of coin and a shit ton of chocolate milk because it's a bar. There's just like stockfuls of alcohol and whatnot. The rogue robs them completely blind. I get a shit ton of chocolate milk that I like carry in drums with me out the window, and that's like the end of that little session. Instead of doing a dick pic joke adventure, we made our own by assaulting two people on accident. That's the chaos part. He meant to do good. He had all good intention and he tried his best, but it's caboose.
Huh.
So that's one character. When I'm evil, I'm much more mischievous. I've only played one evil player character. I would say there's one that was like heading in the direction of evil. But the one like properly, no, this person is evil. I basically, if my little sister Taylor listens to this, I want to tell her I love her dearly. But she was an asshole. So I basically base it off of a younger version of my sister Taylor, where it's just manipulative to hell and back. Like, does not give a shit who you are, what you do. Like, it's her way or the highway. I don't know how many people she murdered. This was a female character to boot, but it was a noble in the Star Wars Saga edition. It was one of those things where she would be like talking, having fun, flirtatious, looks over the corner of her shoulder and just like rolls her eyes and just goes that kind of thing. Just complete maniacal asshole. It got so far as the person's like, wow, cool, you really like me. Here, I'll show you my ship, and like here's all this other stuff. And basically the person gets handcuffed and beat, like bludgeoned to death with his own baton. And then I take his outfit, take out a pistol, shoot him in the back of the head a couple of times to make sure he's dead and doesn't speak, take the rest of his gear, walk out. All right, I have a disguise. Like that was the level of evil. And that's probably where the satyr's going to lean towards, but not quite as chaotic, because that I'm planning on him being neutral evil, so he has more tact with it. He won't just off a character because they might be useful later. So that's a long rant on what kind of character.
I was always usually more around the neutral category, like neutral good, or I really liked lawful neutral. I always thought that was a really fun one.
Follow the law, whatever the law says.
Well, but it could be your own law. That's the thing about lawful neutral. It's on either side, right? So if you have like a personal code, like like the Punisher or Max Payne or any of those kinds of characters, and they don't need to be that style of anti-hero, but like they have their own sense of what right is. It's not superseded by. And that was really fun because we had a what was it? Oath of the Crown Paladin in that party who was lawful good, and we were, even though I was a Tempest cleric, we were both like holy men. We had this huge divide in us because like I abided by the laws of thunder and my own beliefs, right? So that was a constant tension throughout our party. It was fun. We played it really well. It was a great time.
No, alignment's always a really weird thing to talk about because I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you almost need to have a conversation with your DM on is alignment integral to a character, or do you just like let them do their thing? In some of the older versions of D&D, and to a little bit of an extent, even 5e touches on that. Alignment was really huge. Like you couldn't cast spells because of your alignment, that kind of thing.
You had to be lawful good to be a paladin. Just outright.
Yeah. So that's one conversation topic is like, all right, how much are you going to be using alignment? 2, what kind of alignment are you going by? Is it alignment of your character and the grander scope of things? In which case I would say the caboose and wagon type would just be neutral chaotic. They're just chaotic. They might be intending to do good, but they don't always do good. Versus what the character's version of alignment is, where caboose and wagon, I would say, is chaotic good. Really, I would probably say they're neutral good. Like, they try to follow laws, they just really don't know what they are, and sometimes they forget. Like, that's kind of that weird definition change on what perspective.
Yeah. To me, it's always about the intent of the character. Yeah. Like, sometimes, like, the consequences may differ. Maybe they did something short-sighted or whatever, but to me, it's the intent. What is the character trying to do? And what do they think and what do they understand?
Yeah,
that's absolutely where I usually draw it from. But it is a big conversation.
Right? No,
usually I'm just very open to it, and I'm just like, what do you want to sell me on it? Like, that's my thing as a DM. Sell me on it. If you can sell me on your bullshit, Let's go. But you got to sell me.
No, I'm the same way. It's something where in running Star Wars games, I'm known for the rule of not allowing Ewoks. Because I started running in the Clone Wars era, going into like the very pre-Empire, just getting into how it ends up becoming in Episode 4. So in that Clone Wars to like maybe not even as far as 10 years into the Empire existing type thing, that was where I would set it. And Ewoks, like Endor, doesn't really come up until Episode 6. It's a sanctuary moon in the middle of nowhere kind of thing, almost untouched by society, until the Empire shows up and starts building a Death Star 2. With that as kind of like the basis for it, the stipulation, I said, I don't care that it's in the main player's handbook.
No fun allowed.
don't have Ewoks, because there's not a lot of Ewoks. There's so many other things that you can pick from, but narratively, there's not a lot of reason for Ewoks to be in the rest of the galaxy. If it was after episode 6, I literally would have no problem. But pre episode 6, that's tough. They're just not discovered. Um, so what ends up happening is my first game that I run, I have a couple of different people. One of them, Chris, bless him, he only looked through the player's handbook. He didn't see like that little blurb in the pitch of the campaign, and so he goes up to me. He's like, "So I was thinking, can I play an Ewok?" And I just went, "Chris, I had one rule." I had one rule. I literally, that was the rule that I had, was not Ewoks, because they're just not around. And so we talked back and forth. I'm like, okay, if you really want to play an Ewok, which could be fun, I'm gonna need a really good reason why your Ewok is connected to the rest of the galaxy. How the hell did they get off Endor? And he's like, okay, so what if like I was in the middle of like a hunting, gather, adventure type thing on Endor, like on behalf of my clan, my tribe, whatever, and in the midst of this, I come across a bunch of pirates, and they just think that I'm like some like I'm not even a sentient creature. They just think of me as a pet, and they kidnap me and take me off world, and like I have a little bit of a grudge against it after the fact. They like teach me how to understand common, and like um just because it fetches a higher price, but like it's something where I still hold it against them to this day. And I went, shit, that's really good. All right, you know what, you're in, let's go. Following that, I still maintained that rule when I pitched the different campaigns, but I ended up holding like a little presentation of like how to pander to your players. And I pointed out that a lot of the times there are different settings or rule sets or whatever. DMs will have different ideas that a character, a class, whatever, is going to be banned, right? And uh, when that situation comes up, my response was nobly oblige, even when offending kiddos shan't. No Ewoks. And so literally it was, okay, you might have the rule, but you know what? You can break the rule within reason. The key there is just don't be afraid to say no, but always be willing to provide a reason that could work, or something that's more manageable or fits better for the system. If it's a low magic setting and somebody's trying to play a wizard, they're going to have to make a really strong case why they're a wizard, or maybe they have the wizard multi-class fighter or something like that, and they're cutting edge on magic, like breakthrough type stuff. Something like that. Any kind of flavor that makes their character unique, even though it's not like within the realm of your setting, your system. If you can make it work, it often makes for really fun and really cool characters and moments later in the campaign. That Ewok eventually became like a war hero of the Clone Wars, and was known for being like one of the stealthiest mofos in the galaxy type of idea. Like it just, from that one okay, you know what? Fine. Let's go with it. Now I just have this character that is always near and dear to my heart. So,
Well,
yeah.
it's one of those things. Happy players, happy campaign.
Yeah. No,
That's usually where
exactly. Exactly. And that's where it's at the end of the day, this is a game. You know, you want to make sure that you are having fun, the players are having fun, things are engaging, things are interesting, stuff like that. Um, so outside of D and outside of my D&D things, what do you have going on your side?
back at it, just installing doors like they're going out of style. It
Mm-hmm.
has been pretty crazy.
Got any games
I
coming up?
haven't been
Any games coming up
games coming up.
for D&D or
Oh,
otherwise outside
for
of
my
mine?
own, yeah. Apologies. Well, it'll be interesting. My little sister actually wants to start DMing, but not
Ooh.
for D&D. She wants to start doing Call of Cthulhu, whatever the newest edition is that I can't
Ooh.
remember it off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
so
I
that'll be
love
really
Call of
fun.
Cthulhu.
Be looking to do a one shot, and I
I've
get to just play.
I've always
So that'll
looked
be
at it from a distance and thought that would be so much fun to play in. Is this the first time she's DM'd, or has she run the
um.
game before?
She may have done 5e at some. I don't think she has done any 5e. I think this is really her first shot at DMing. It definitely is for
Ooh.
Cthulhu.
Okay.
So I'm really excited. That'll be cool. See how
Has
that
she
goes.
played Cthulhu before?
No, she has watched the Call of Cthulhu stuff they've done on Geek and Sundry and like with Critical
Ah,
Role.
okay.
She's watched a lot of that, and I shared with her some other ones that I like.
Yeah. Okay. That's important. I'm like, so long as she's not going into Call of Cthulhu blind, I think
No,
that'll be a good time.
she has and like she has the handbook. Like she's like my sister, shockingly, much more astute than me. Like I would say up like with kind of Jordan's level of that. So she's
Like
pretty
goes in
good
and
at.
goes ham.
Yeah, she will get the book. She will do the research. Like she's very thorough like that. If she's gonna put the time into something,
Okay. Cool.
there will be some hours invested. So
No,
I'm looking forward to it.
yeah, that'll help a
But
lot as a DM. Is it basically, I want to say that the more time that you can put into making the game, usually the smoother the game goes. Even if it's not necessarily like, yes, I'm going line by line for dialogue. I don't think that's good DM planning, but
Yeah,
knowing the flavor of your system, knowing the core rules of the system, how the functionality works, and where you can follow, find, or break rules. Oh my gosh, it's such a big difference. Um, Sweet. That's exciting.
right.
Um,
And then other than
so
that, I basically just
mhm.
been painting my little Warhammer figures. That's about
Hey,
me.
how
I guess honestly.
yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
How many figures do you usually paint like in a month, for example? Because I know that you do
It
have a
really
lot.
varies.
Yeah.
It really varies. I'm just gonna grab a couple. But it can be anything. Like if it's like a troop unit, like it's like 5 just basic guys,
Yeah.
I can do that. Like I can do like I could really do a lot of those a month. Usually I get like if it's one character model or like 5 guys, like usually 2 or 3 a month.
Okay. And
Just
then
depends. I'm slower sometimes.
yeah, and then are you hand painting all of the details? Do you like do coats of sprayed on primer and then follow up with another spray? Like how do you usually go about it? Just depends on
So
the mini.
this is one of my guys showing them off.
Ooh.
I know my camera's amazing, but I use a spray primer to
Okay.
start off with, and it's just because my guys are Space Marines, so that helps painting out a lot because
Yeah,
they're primarily one color. Think Terrans from StarCraft,
sure.
literally.
Yeah.
Um, so I use a purple spray primer, spray the whole thing down, make sure that's just a good even coat, and then I just start to paint the details over, like shoulder pads, their swords, things like that. Mine
Yeah.
are what are called battle ready, so it's like,
Okay.
do you have more than 3 colors on your model, and is it based? And you can see this guy, he's got like little sand textured paint and little bushes.
Hmm.
Whereas this guy's just got that. So I got, a little basing going on,
Yeah.
Not trying to do anything too crazy. I just want to play, but it's fun.
Yeah,
Good
something
way to chill out.
that you can use and kind of mellow out while you make it.
And it's great because this is a custom faction and that's supported in the rules of the game. And I think that's really, really cool. It's just like you can just build your own Space Marine thing. You can pick your colors and all that. It's really cool.
Sweet. No, I mean shoot, I like with the printer stuff, that's something that I
I
cannot
really
will not
want to get
probably
a 3D print. Yeah.
yeah.
I really want to get one just to help with this
Hey,
stuff because, God, you can do some cool stuff.
yeah, you don't even, have to get a 3D printer. Just, come move
I'm
down
just
to
going to
the
move back
state.
to
Yeah,
Colorado.
just move back to Colorado. I'll print you
I
stuff.
really want
Do it.
I really want to get some maces for these.
You can
There's
you
one
can
unit.
you can paint this for me. There you go. Or bigger ones cuz these ones are a
I could
little
probably
small.
do that.
Yeah.
That one would be pretty easy because you could just do lots of like textury stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not a very good painter.
Plus, the other thing that's kind of nice with 3D printing is that you can have different filaments for your different things. So, like your underlying coat of whatever. I don't know if there's any clear primers. I imagine there are that you could potentially use for making something adhere a little bit better to the material. I don't know
Oh,
how PLA works for painting purposes. I know we tried using a Sharpie for
they
the minions.
people do it. There
Yeah,
has to be methods on how to do it because
yeah,
I know there's a lot of 3D FTLs for it out there.
yeah, yeah. So that's something that we'd have to figure out. But like, if you paint and I print, let's fucking go. um, Sweet. So outside of kind of what's going on in our lives and whatnot, holidays. Uh, this Monday, the would be the 7th. there's a whole bunch of them. Uh, the ones that I thought were some of the more fun were I know you really like National Fettuccine Alfredo Day.
Oh,
Just a whole day to set aside for
love
it. It's pretty good.
love me some
I
fettuccine alfredo.
I
The
I
chicken,
yeah. Yeah, with a little bit of parmesan and whatnot on the top.
that some
Mm-hmm.
mushrooms.
Yep. So Fettuccine Alfredo Day. There's Send a Card to a Friend Day. I'm a bad friend. I did not send you one. You might be getting a new
I'm the
card.
best friend. I already did. It's going to be arriving right after this podcast
Oh,
ends,
okay. Oh,
conveniently.
wow.
So,
The timing.
yeah.
There's Granada Independence Day. So, we get
Go
to
Granada.
celebrate. Yep, independence for Granada.
Shout
There's
outs to Mr. Wooly Versus, one of my favorite content creators. He's from there.
Yeah, and then the last three that I wrote down, there's National Black HIV and AIDS Awareness Day, so specifically acknowledging and drawing attention to that. And then there was Ballet Day, which I'm a little bit of a sucker for because background with dance and whatnot.
Now,
I
of
need to go
course,
back to the
I should be
studio.
taking this because I really like Black Swan, and that's what I have to say on this topic.
I still haven't seen Black Swan. We might have to talk about that. That'll be one of those things where we're gonna have to like set aside a week where it's like Connor hasn't seen the movie, and vice versa. Connor has seen the movie, Jordan hasn't seen the movie. We'll have to set something up for that.
I guess we can rotate into that
We could rotate
with
it.
today's after this.
Yeah,
Since
we'll figure something out.
either way,
So Ballet Day, and then there's also, and this one I thought was really fun, National Sickie Day. So apparently, uh, the first Monday in February is where most workers will call in sick, and I don't know if this is worldwide, if it's like U.S. and Europe as well, but from what I could see, National Sickie Day is a little bit more of a British-based uh, study thing that came out where uh, it it seems to come out of the fact that when you get into February, you're running into seasonal depression issues. There's the post-holiday high. So like you're not celebrating Christmas and the like, you're not seeing family and whatnot, but you're still kind of sequestered in uh, stuff like that. I have no idea how this like translates with the pandemic because it's been a stay at home, don't go outside for a large chunk of that. So I don't know how much that might have changed, but it is something where like depression, anxiety, stuff like that, those cases are much more noted this time of year. So that was an interesting uh, day that I think similar with like Black AIDS Awareness Day. I think it's worth mentioning because for me personally, I very much like to draw attention to like mental health and the like because I had a pretty bad bout of it during high school and whatnot. Just existentialism sets in. But yeah, those were the different holidays. And then we were going to talk about two different main topics outside of goodness. We already set aside a huge chunk with D&D. Um, but there were two topics we were going to touch on. The first is Vox Machina, just trailing off of the D&D thing. The next three episodes that had come out, um, I I really liked them. Uh, Basically everything that I wanted improvements from in the first three episodes seem to have carried through. There's more story ramping. There's more narrative focus. Um, it feels like there's less of an importance or less obviously notable things that are like mechanically based. I felt like in the first one it was a little bit easier to see like, oh, that's a D&D mechanic. I think with the second three episodes it doesn't feel quite as much like that, or it feels more in tune with the story. There's a little bit of like a running joke without getting into spoilers that is funnier if you've played D&D because you get it, you've been there, but it's still funny of its own merits in the show. Um, and Again, because Vox Machina is based on Critical Role's first campaign, you do get some Easter eggs like The table that they used that was gifted to them during the actual Critical Role campaign, that table actually like shows up just in one of the scenes. It's just there. Um, and it's not like a small like, oh, it's in the background corner. Like there's a whole scene that happens in that room. Um, that was pretty freaking awesome to witness. What have your thoughts been with Vox Machina?
The most recent episodes have been nice. I think the production has stepped up a bit, which has been great. It's good to see.
Yeah,
I think they're kind of getting to the point where they're dialing it in a little more since it's the second batch, so that's been good to see. Some
yeah.
like solid signs of improvement. So,
The
and
let's
it's really maintained on the storytelling. Like it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
this is just it's such a slam dunk in that category, man. Like you've got so much
yeah,
to
and
draw from.
yeah,
Like
and it could have
oh
easily been bogged down by. I mean, I feel like that's almost always the issue that comes from book adaptations or video game adaptations, what have you, is that there's so much that it draws from that it just gets caught up in its own like, oh we need to. They found a really clean way of cutting it down while still maintaining the thread and the character moments. And design is still like killing it. I think
oh
visually
absolutely.
the design of everything looks really good. Um, but now I feel like they're emoting better, they're moving better, just going on that production value. Like my goodness, that there was so much stuff happening in those 3 episodes that just made me that much more excited. Literally everything that I was kind of like, I don't know about some of the choices here. It feels like it just has escalated to a point of awesome. Let's keep going. I'm really hyped
Oh yeah.
now. Before I was like, yeah, that was pretty awesome. Now I am properly like excited. Like, okay, cool. I'm on board. I'm gonna have to sit and watch each 3 chunk episode release as it comes out, type of thing. Um, cool. So that's Vox Machina. The other uh film that we looked at, the other piece of media, was The Pianist, and this would be, I would say, for us quite a jump in what kind of things we've been looking at. The Pianist is a World War II movie where it follows a piano player uh, that was in, I believe it's in Warsaw, Poland, and follows his
Yeah, it is.
experiences as a Jew during the Holocaust. And with that, um, initially, how did you feel about the movie?
I was really honestly just awestruck. I thought it was like it's very a it's a long movie.
Yeah,
Jeez, I
like two and
didn't
a
know
half
it was this.
hours. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a big one. But I was initially really excited to go into it because Adrian Brody plays the League of Spielman,
Mhm.
and so that was very exciting for me to go off of. But I thought it was really well crafted from a visual standpoint. There's a lot of very great motifs of kind of just like helpless staring. Like
Mm.
everybody is always looking at a window or staring at some horrible atrocity going on,
Yeah.
and it really like kind of puts you in that situation as like it's a lot more immersive, I find, because you're right there with the characters just watching helplessly
Yeah.
as the tragedies that happened in during the Nazi emancipation of Poland, just go forth.
Yeah. And I guess kind of carrying on from that, there's there's a lot of moments where you just have I feel like the immediate comparison I draw to The Pianist is Schindler's List, which would have come out, within the decade of each other. Um, with Schindler's List, it felt more, I guess the term I would use is more operatic. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for, but it felt more like an epic. You follow the bigger points throughout, and it's not just one person's perspective. You get a lot of different pieces and aspects of that, and it felt like it got the scale of the tragedy really well with the Holocaust, while in The Pianist it feels a little bit more grounded, a little bit more personal, because it is following mostly Spielman's kind of point of view throughout the whole thing, and it doesn't really stray all that much from it. When it does kind of stray, it's rather than being like in the window looking out at things unfolding, it goes almost documentary like, where you've just like a stationary still frame of the set and the actors in play, just like at a distance in the corner. Like you do feel like there's almost a level of powerlessness where you're just kind of sequestered to your own little piece of this bigger world. And at one point, literally, he's just like, he ends up getting helped by a German soldier whose name I forget. This is all based on a true story, so even the German soldier, like that actually happens, where he ends up later in the movie. He's
I think it's like Hosenfeld.
Hosenfeld, yeah,
Hosenfeld.
Hosenfeld, if you
Yeah,
pronounce it more
Hosenfeld.
German, yeah. Um, and this German officer Hosenfeld like actually helps like feed and take care of Spielman while he's hiding in an attic, and Spielman just hears gunfire and stuff, and he just looks over and goes, "What does it mean?" Like he has no idea that the Russians are even there and invading. He's literally just been in his corner, just trying to make do the entire time, and doesn't know that the war is kind of like flipping around at this point on a grander scale. That's something that it's I
It's a
don't
very
know.
specific part of World War II in a very specific
Hmm.
place, at a very specific time, to a very
Yeah,
specific person.
yeah. It only comes up because that's how it is with his existence, really. And I think that with something like Schindler's List, because again, I can't help but draw those comparisons, that had a bigger sense of like what the war effort kind of looked like, especially since Schindler worked in kind of as an ironmonger with the factories and the like. That's something where you get the grander scope with that. In this, you don't really get that. The only thing that you would get is, as an audience member, you get the what's the term where the audience knows something that the characters don't, uh dramatic irony. You get that,
Mm.
the dramatic irony of knowing, oh yeah, like the Russians coming in, that's going to change the tide of the war. Is it much better? Questionably. You do see the Germans kind of hold up very similar to how the Jews were earlier in the film, but it does give like a little bit of hope for Spielman's character to know that the Russians are like on their way. But really, like even though it's a piece of the pie, it ultimately he's trying to live. like like cool, the Russians are invading. Great. Good to know. I'm trying to open a can of pickles. like
It
that's
is
that's
really
kind
just
of where
about a
he's
man
at.
trying to survive
Yeah. Um
any way he can.
initially, no, absolutely. Initially, I I didn't I wouldn't say that I love the movie. I don't hate the movie either. I think it's one of those things where I'm going to have to sit with this movie and watch it again, and I'll probably appreciate it more. But it is, I would say, a dense movie and a long movie. And that's kind of my takeaway. That again, that doesn't mean that I hate the movie. I did enjoy it as I was watching it, but like, is this something that is on my favorites? Probably not. I still think Schindler's List is more emotionally provocative for me, but I think that that movie's trying to be emotionally provocative. Well, this movie is not. This movie is trying to be more
It's
uh
telling a story, really.
yeah,
I know it
it's
sounds
more
stupid.
biographical. It's more
Yeah,
I don't even know. It feels like you're just like taken away into the slice of life type of thing, while with something like Schindler's List, or honestly a lot of films or documentaries and that kind of thing, try to get more into the grand scope of the tragedy. This doesn't seem to do that. This is much more personal and more immersive, I think is the word I'm looking for.
I really appreciate it in that I think it does really convey the scale of World War II and things, but it does it in like the background. Like
Yeah.
there's the
Yeah.
scene where Adrian Brody's walking through the torn out, like blown out Warsaw, and you literally are like the
Yeah.
camera is on a dolly going backwards, following. You're just looking at Adrian Brody's face, but you have this beautiful wide shot of just this destroyed city
Yeah.
and how it goes on feel. And that really is where that is. All of that is in the background. Every little extra, they tell a different specific thing that really happened, right?
Yep.
Like
Yep.
even the Nazi officer making the Jewish people, forcing them to dance and stuff, like that
Yeah.
kind of degrading action.
Yeah, exactly. Where you get to see the smaller moments that lead to further and further tragedy kind of throughout the entire experience. I think
It's
something.
almost like Dark Souls, where you kind of gotta pick through it and like really look for those little bits as best you can and take
Yeah.
away whatever fun you can.
Yeah, and I guess similar
Some
to that
morsels.
with something like Schindler's List, it felt like they were kind of going about making the best of it, and then tragedy, like here's the emotional hammer of like, no, this is real bad. In this movie, it's just kind of like, it's bad, it's bad, it's badder, it's badder, nah, it's pretty bad, yeah, it's pretty bad. Like it's just like this slow ramping scale throughout
It's a
the
lot like the
entirety of it.
Odyssey. It's kind of just a parade of like bad things happening to one
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah, and going off of like the background thing with Schindler's List, I didn't really get the sense that like people were dying at every step of this conjuncture along the way. And in this, I mean, it's something where just like, yeah, people were malnourished in the ghetto, and that's it. Like, that's the end of that guy's story. Or further along, you get like they're just like out in the sun preparing for resettlement, which eventually leads to them going to one of the death camps. Like, that's one of those things where it's like people are just dying left and right, piece by piece throughout this entire process, and that's something that I don't think Schindler's List does uh,
Well,
in the similar in a same way. It feels more like here's a blunt force hammer, while this is more like, no, this is a process.
and it's interesting too because in the film, it actually the saturation is slowly turned down consistently throughout the whole runtime.
Hmm.
So as it goes on, the film literally gets like darker and grayer
Yeah, I
as an
didn't even
interesting
pick
of
up
that
on that.
that
No,
slow
that
decline.
no, no, that makes sense. Yeah.
And
So,
an interesting thing, it's kind of funny because it is about a real guy, but a lot of the events and like the little side pieces and things, they're
mhm.
actually things that happened to the director, Roman Polanski, while he was going through the Nazi occupation of Warsaw as well.
Yeah, because he actually, as a child, he survived and got out. While a little bit after, I think it was his mother had ended up dying. Um,
Yeah, in Auschwitz.
yeah, so that's something that actually follows more biographically in that sense for him as a director, much less
Yeah,
the character
it's kind of interesting.
Spielman that this is even about in the first place.
Which is
Um,
a little funny because like it's a film based on really one perspective, like Jordan's
mhm.
saying, like the story is always from Spielman, but it is informed by many, which
Yeah,
is really fun, which is really interesting.
yeah,
Like all those getting channeled into just one powerful character.
yeah. So that's kind of talking about the broad strokes and the the initial thoughts, the filmmaking of it. Going into the story proper. This is the like, here's the spoiler bit. So if you're still listening after this, if you wanted to go see it, I would recommend it. I do think it's a really good movie. Um, you're gonna have to sit down and like pay attention to it. So I would say like get your popcorn, like
And maybe if
set a
you're in a
time
really
aside.
good mood and get bummed out by movies, maybe hold on to this one for a little while.
Yeah,
It's
hold
pretty
on
serial.
until hold on until you're in the mood for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Um,
heavy. It's heavy.
absolutely. So getting into the spoiler aspects of it, I I feel like a large chunk of this movie, like we talked about that it's a little bit more focused on the one person's perspective. I feel like the movie almost goes vignette to vignette, um, where it does rely a lot on Spielman kind of luckily making his way through situations. He happens to be the fortunate one of circumstance, even though that these are terrible for circumstances. Like he just so happens to like come across everything well enough between either his own fortune or the kindness of others. But at the end of the day, he is still very much powerless and a fish out of water when the world itself is kind of like crumbling down around. And to me, it my thought, especially with the fact that they made it in some scenes look very documentary-esque, I very much like to compare it to almost like a dramatic, a serious version of like Charlie Chaplin or Mr. Bean. While those are comical and are made to kind of like get a laugh out of people, I feel like this is the opposite take. Like it's no, here's kind of the series of unfortunate events, for lack of better term. Here's this whole list of trials and tribulations that Spielman goes through to make it out to the other side. And I think it helps that one of the scenes feels kind of like something that could be like if it was shot differently, it could absolutely be the premise of one of those like comical like silent movie type of things where after coming across Hosenfeld, who does help him. I guess that was a little bit spoiler earlier. With Hosenfeld, the Germans end up retreating from their section, and so he drops off like an entire thing of supplies and says the Russians are coming, and he hands him his jacket. And in a comically filmed version of this, I could see him having the jacket, getting like being greeted by the Russians who immediately start shooting him as being a German. I could see that being really really funny. Like that's something that's almost straight out of a cartoon kind of mistaken identity thing. While in this case it is taken more seriously. I think it's almost a dark humor, where he's like, I'm Polish, please, I'm Polish. What the hell's the joke? And he's like, dude, I'm cold. Like it is much more serious in its nature, but I do think there is some kind of aspect, some play of that just incidental like crashing your way through to success aspect of it. I don't know how others
Well,
what
it
other way
is
to describe
interesting.
it.
There is a Charlie Chaplin movie. It's called Le Kid, or
Mm,
like something like that. It's like the kid in French.
sure.
And it's set in a time of famine in France, and it is very much like him surviving, but he ends up being stuck with this kid, so he has to raise this kid whose mom had to give it up.
Mhm,
And I would say it's actually very similar because it goes through like multiple years of his life going through this famine and like helping the kid, become self-sufficient.
mhm.
So it's like honestly, I would really agree with that because I'd say there's a lot of good parallels with that film and this one of like
Yeah.
the plotline and overarching storyline and narrative.
Yeah. And I feel like the grander scope of the movie is hard to describe without it being kind of known knowledge, because it goes through the same beats, I would say, as like Schindler's List, where it's like, okay, so the Jewish population in Warsaw is like living their lives, and then there's armbands as a by law restriction on them, so that they can be identified, and then it's the resettlement into the ghetto, and then the ghetto gets worse, and then after that it's the liquidation of the ghetto, and then finally it's like the full resettlement, which leads to either the death camps. And that's, I think at that point, that's when it kind of takes a turn into the more unexpected territory from what I was thinking this movie would be like or where it would go. And it goes into almost rather than just addressing the Holocaust aspect of it, because that is a big aspect of it, it also goes into like just surviving post-war Europe craziness, because like goodness, everything got just absolutely utterly annihilated in World War II. Where I mean, there's that one shot where you mentioned there's like the dolly where you've got him just standing in the distance. It looks like a piece of concept art where you just have his small silhouette and then this giant span of just ruined buildings where he had just managed to like get over a fence. I'm not sure if he either sprained his ankle or broke his leg, but he's limping at this point because he's just like he can't do athletic things. He's just not nourished enough, and going from where people are actively like burning things down, shooting, launching grenades, and the like, gets over the fence, and it's just like completely worn, torn structures where like seeing all the crumpled buildings and stuff, at that point you just kind of go, dude, how's this guy gonna make it another 3 days, much less like through
It
the end
looks
of
like
the
the
war.
apocalypse.
Yeah,
Like he lived through the apocalypse straight up.
yeah, yeah, straight out of like it could have been a zombie movie kind of thing. And that was pretty interesting to see that take of it, because again, this is more biographical. You get to touch different parts of the war that I don't think a lot of other films really do, because usually it's something where it's like, okay, you get the devastation of the Holocaust itself, and you get the devastation of like soldiers on the front lines, but here's just a dude that was trying to like live live his life, playing for a radio station, and now is in what would be a zombie wasteland. Like it's a pretty striking difference. And um one thing that we noted that was kind of funny and weirdly topical was the fact that there's this transition between what I would say is him surviving the Holocaust aspect and him surviving the post-war aspect. There's this little spot in the middle where it's him surviving as somebody relying on the kindness of others being hidden away. And not gonna lie, it's kind of like being quarantined off. He gets to just see what the outside world is doing through his window. There's a lot of those window shots. He gets to see like over like across the street is where the like the Jewish population that's still working with the Nazi governance, they're actually like actively starting a resistance movement and attacking the German soldiers. He actually helped like smuggle guns and weaponry at certain points in this part in the movie. At this point, he just gets to witness it from a window, like the world caving in around him, but he can't really do anything. He can't really go anywhere. He's just trying to like make do and just watch the time just roll by. Like it really was crazy just seeing, yeah, because this movie starts in what 1939, with the invasion on either side, and they're like, oh yeah, the invasion's gonna be over. Britain and France said that they're gonna send troops. They never do. And then it like 2 years and 2 years and 1945, like it just suddenly, the better part of a decade goes by in this movie.
Well, and I always go back to those windows because it's so cool because it's this almost diegetic way of framing a shot because every shot's obviously framed by the
Yeah,
camera,
yeah,
obviously, but it's cool because it puts us and the character almost on the same level, and that I really helps with that. You were bringing up earlier the immersion factor of the film.
yeah. You
Like
really get
there's a very,
the point of view shot of
yeah,
sorts.
like you're on the same level. I really enjoy that, and I think that's something that is used amazingly well throughout the whole thing. In the beginning, they see the other Jewish family being attacked by
Yeah,
those Nazi officers, and they literally just sit there, and they
yeah,
can't do anything about it.
yeah.
And that speaks that dread of just being so isolated and locked away almost.
Right
It,
on the
it
brink of disaster, but you're still there.
I when we picked this, honestly, it was easily available for me, and it was old enough that Jordan could easily get a hold of it to watch, and
Yeah.
it kind of ended up being weirdly appropriate for the times we find ourselves in, which was not at all intentional, honestly.
No, no. Yeah. Uh,
And I really like you were talking
mhm.
about how he's surviving on the kindness of others. I think Roger Ebert, he has a whole quote on this, but there's just a quick little thing. But it's like Polanski is reflecting, I believe, his own deepest feelings that he survived but need not have, and that his mother died and left a wound that never healed. But it's like that whole thing of like he need not have, how like obviously there were Nazis who were good enough people to let him go and do their thing. That would
Yeah,
show they do have the capability to do that, and they at any time could have. And if they had done more, who knows? And it's just interesting how it that needlessness is really
yeah,
interesting. I never really thought about that before, like how honestly needless the entire thing was, how it didn't
yeah.
really need to happen at all,
It
and like the tragedy in that,
yeah, that
like this
it's
woman's just gone forever for never doing anything to
yeah,
anybody.
and that's a really good quote.
And it's the same as like COVID, it's just it is what it is.
Yeah,
It's
it,
really all quite needless, but it's
yeah,
what's happening.
like more things could have been done uh like in the faith of trying to help your fellow man and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And um you're to an extent, as an individual, you're somewhat powerless, but an individual still can make a massive difference in somebody else's story. That's kind of, I think, the feeling of it is, if you're in a place of like hopelessness or the like, um having that outside assistance, that outside help, that is an entire world of difference. That really makes or breaks what'll happen to you in your story, like going from that day on. um and surprisingly enough, like getting to the end of the movie, because this is more biographical, you have Hosenfeld, the German officer, helping Spielman, the main character, and they have this conversation with each other, and he says, what's your name? Spielman, that's a good name. Maybe I'll hear you on like the Polish radio when this is all said and done. And one of the people that happens to work at the Polish radio station like passes by the Soviet camp that Hosenfeld is being held in as a prisoner of war alongside all of the other. He's held as a POW along with the other, German officers and soldiers there. And Hosenfeld like calls out the dude and is just like, hey, bud, you said you're Jewish. Do you happen to know Spielman? He's a Jewish pianist, Polish radio. Like, do you know him? Can you tell him to try to find me, get me out of this? And when word finally makes its way back to Spielman, like he he very much like tries to do a solid back, but it just doesn't it doesn't pay out in terms of that timing. And this is something that I think, if it was a thematic centric movie and was less biographical, I think that would be like it comes full circle. The guy saves the person that rescued him. Because it's biographical, again, you're but one individual in a wider world. This is something I looked up after the fact. Um, in the movie, it shows Hosenfeld like go to the spot that camp was at. They go to try to talk to the factory workers, and then in the like post credits, like Spielman lived until he was in his 80s in Warsaw. Hosenfeld, all that's known is that he died in Soviet camp, or under Soviet jurisdiction in 1952. So to elaborate more on
Oof.
that, yeah, to elaborate more, uh, what ends up happening in like the actual story of it, in real life, not just like in the context of the movie, uh Spielman actually went to a good number of different like Polish officers and ranking officials to try to get Hosenfeld out of what was going on. But it turns out to be the case that Hosenfeld, he's a captain in the World War II Army. Apparently, there was more being done that kind of leans on to the spy aspect of it, as well as like the nature of kind of the tragedies of what happened in World War II. And so it wasn't just a like, oh, a Polish jurisdiction thing. It was, no, he was moved to a different part of the Soviet Union and worked in a labor camp because of what went down. At that point, we don't really know, other than he died in 1952 due to some kind of throat related trauma, likely related to torture. That's
Hmm.
the actual extent of what we know about Hosenfeld. Like, that's in real life, that's what went down. It's pretty grim that
Yeah.
like he tried very much to figure out where he was to try to get him out. And it's something like he's on record on saying like the Polish captain that I met was a real son of a bitch or something like that. And like, even though this guy is straight out of the like the devil's menagerie, he couldn't he couldn't pull something out of the Soviet Russia of the time. Like that was kind of the level of shit, like they really were kind of stripped of being able to help Hosenfeld at the end of it. It's kind of weird how, like, going into the idea that luck plays a massive part of why Spielman survives in this movie. It feels like that very much still carries weight into the other characters of the film, like Hosenfeld, like looking into the grander story biographically. So it's definitely a think piece, I would say. It's something that you watch and you sit with it, and then you go and you watch it again, and you're gonna pick up a lot more. Um, it's long.
After processing it all for a
Yeah,
while.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
immersive. It's long. It's a all right. Here you go. Pretty good. Pretty good.
I would say too, if you really enjoy it, you should check out I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Point and
Mm.
click adventure game actually is what I would really suggest, because there's a really cool part based in Nazi Germany that's really fun. I think is also very interesting in that, I think.
Yeah. Well, that video game's based on
A
a
short
short
story.
story. Yeah,
And
which is
Harlan Ellis actually worked with the game designers to make that game. It's really
ooh,
cool.
I did not know
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
And it is approved by him. He says that, yeah,
yeah. I have no mouth, but
it's
I must
awesome.
scream. It is I would say like
Amazing
this.
story.
It's
Specifically, the Nazi scientist. That's like the big
yeah. It's
I
very
can't remember.
dystopic. It's
Nim
very
Doc.
pessimistic, I would even say.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
with this movie, there is a little bit of optimism in that by the goodwill of others and by your own fortune, you can kind of make your way through. Um, with
But
I have
do
no
you know how
mouth, I
you
must
win
scream.
in I Have No Mouth, I Must Scream the game?
No.
You have to work together with the other people who are trapped.
Ah,
You have to help them out,
see, I was
and you have to
thinking
be like
more of the concept of, because my understanding of the actual written version is that it's more a mental exercise, I would say, because it's like legit
well, and
sci-fi. Like,
you could very much, I guess you could honestly, there's a pretty good direct comparison of I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, where he turns one of the characters into a mouthless, just living
yeah,
organism. There's a lot of, similarity to that, right? Being
yeah,
stuck, unhelpful. All you can do is look out and do
and
nothing.
rely on others. Yeah,
Yep. Or anything.
yeah. Well,
Anyways,
less chipper of a subject matter of a movie, I would
great
say,
stories though. Great
but
stories though.
but
Yeah.
very great. Yeah. Um, that said, you can catch us weekly. We post on Mondays, and then if you wanted to see more of me, I post live streams. I live stream on both Sunday and Wednesday. On Sundays, I play Halo, and on Wednesdays, I play Kingdom Hearts. Halo is played with my friend Marcus. He's a roommate of mine, very familiar with Halo. I've never experienced it, so this is me going through. Um, and we've just finished the first Halo game, so we're starting to dip our toes into Halo 2. I'm really excited. Um,
Ooh.
while with Kingdom Hearts, we're kind of approaching the endpoint for that. I'm experienced on the Kingdom Hearts side of things. John has no like direct contact other than he played a little bit of the very first one. So if you want to see more of me, you can check me out at Gillidan for the Win. Link in the doobly doo, as it were, down below. And then Connor, where can they find you?
As always, you can find me grinding away on the showdown ladders on Nonsense Narrator. You want to challenge me, trying to dethrone the king.
Still champs.
As a champ for always, you know. You can also catch some hands on Steam for Band Cleric if you really feel like it.
Take him down.
Play a lot of Tekken 7, Dungeon Fighter if you're into that. Hit me up. Always down to play some games. But yeah, 5 String C on YouTube if you want to see the random videos I post there for some odd reason. But
yeah.
As always, here at Mondays is where you really want to see me.
Yeah.
And sometimes in Jordan's streams as well, if you want to sit there and chat.
He often will pop up as the day goes on. So following that, we'll catch you guys next time. Woo!
Peace, Middle East.
Boop.